إذا بدك إنجليزي أنا وراك بس شوي عشان خلاص.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Just a few words prior to taking some questions from you. On behalf of the European Union and the Troika, it's a particular pleasure for us to welcome President Arafat to Luxembourg before our General Affairs Council meeting tomorrow. As we said at the outset of our meeting, we would prefer to be meeting under better circumstances. We had an opportunity to exchange views in relation to the difficult situation which has emerged in Jerusalem, in the Middle East in the last number of days. We also expressed our concern, the concern of the European Union, in relation to the necessity to restore calm in the area and also to inject momentum into the Middle East peace process. We believe that there is an opportunity in the context of the discussions that will take place in Washington over the next 2 days to restore momentum into the Middle East peace process. In the course of our meetings, the European Union meetings over the last number of days, bilaterally and in Troika formation with Foreign Minister Levy in New York, we emphasised very strongly the necessity for momentum to be restored into the process and a strong signal from the Israeli government that they are both committed to and that they want to implement the peace process on the basis of the Oslo and the Madrid Accords. And we believe that is necessary now to avoid further escalation of difficulties, further loss of life, and to ensure that we can be successful in the implementation of the peace process. The European Union remains committed to the Middle East peace process. We are the major donor, and we will continue with our support, both financially and politically, to the process. And we certainly want to work with President Arafat and his colleagues. And we believe and we hope that arising from the discussions that will take place in Washington, that we can bring back that momentum which is necessary. President would like to.
I am very grateful, Your Excellency, to give me this chance and to give me this opportunity to meet together before the meeting which will take place tomorrow in Washington. And I am here to repeat my thanks by the name of the Palestinian leadership and the Palestinian people to what the European Union is offering to our people and to the Palestinian Authority in all levels, by all means. I will mention one example of this permanent help which we are receiving from the European Union as an example only. They had paid 98% of the promises which they had promised to offer to us among the donors, which means they are the biggest donor who are offering this continuous help to our people in the very difficult circumstances which we are passing, especially from the closure. As you know, we are losing between $6 to $7 million per day from the closure itself. And it is increasing in the last days because of the violences which we had faced. In my opinion, and the opinion of the Palestinian leadership, the European Union has a very important role and important responsibility to protect and to push the peace process in the Middle East. not only between the Palestinians and the Israelis, but in the whole area. Peace is not only a Palestinian need or Israeli need or Arab need, but it is international need. And nobody can neglect or can overjump this very important role of Europe in this attitude. And we have to thank them from our hearts for what they have done to push forward the peace process by different means and in all levels. I have to repeat here again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we have a very constructive talks and warm meeting in which we had the offer to their excellencies the whole details of what had happened and what we are expecting tomorrow, and we are hoping to expect or to achieve from the next meeting which took place in Washington under the supervision of President Clinton to push forward the peace process and to protect it. I had just now also received during the meeting a message from His Excellency Prime Minister Major, and after this meeting I will have the privilege to meet the French Minister of European Affairs, Mr. Barnier, with a message from His Excellency President Chirac. And in the same time, we can't forget the continuous effort by all means from the European Union and from the European countries for our people, for our authority, and for the peace process. Again, I have to repeat to your excellencies, many thanks from our hearts. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I have a few questions.
May I ask President Arafat, you're going to Washington. Have you any reason tonight to believe that the talks in Washington will produce significant agreement by that this will be the result? Secondly, how do you interpret President Mubarak's refusal to attend the meeting? And finally, to the President of the Council, Mr. Spring,
لماذا الرئيس مبارك امتنع عن الذهاب إلى واشنطن؟ هذه السؤالين الموجهين لك.
Actually, we are going there to push forward the peace process.
This is just one meeting.
And to achieve something concrete in this line, especially after the last events and before that, with the new government in Israel. When we signed the agreement, we had signed the agreement with the Israeli government, not with the Labour Party or with the Likud Party. And we respect the choice of the Israeli people. And for your information, I have to remind you and all the other colleagues here that these agreements had been accepted by the Knesset in Israel, and by our Legislative Council and by our PNC Council, which means we are committed to it as Palestinians, as PLO, and as Palestinian National Authority, and in the same time, the Israeli government and the Israeli people are committed to it. And we hope tomorrow something concrete will be achieved in this attitude. Concerning what the second question, I was in Egypt this morning, and His Excellency President Mubarak gave me the privilege to discuss with him in details all these points of the memorandum of the invitation, and while I was here, I had received from His Excellency a phone. He gave the order to the Egyptian Foreign Minister, Mr. Amr Musa, to stay in Washington with the Palestinian delegation to help us.
Just to deal with the third leg of that question by an experienced journalist, to get 3 questions in for the price of 1. In Europe and President Netanyahu in recent days. Also, I've had the opportunity of having a bilateral with Foreign Minister Levy, and we had a troika with Foreign Minister Levy in New York last week. And also some of my colleagues, indeed many of my colleagues, have met with President Arafat. Focus we should now have on that meeting, that we have results from that meeting in relation to restoring momentum into the peace process.
Results from that meeting take place?
I hope not to be a picture. I hope, because the picture had already done. And the meeting took place between me and His Excellency Mr. Netanyahu in Ares. But the most important thing, how to implement accurately and honestly what had been signed and what had been agreed upon.
Mark Costigan. Mr. Spring, and you're going to speak to Warren Christopher. What measures would you suggest to him will restore confidence?
Well, the basis of the agreement, as the President has said, was agreed between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli government. What we have to see now is, one, the various steps taken in relation to the various committees that are set up, the steering committee, and then the various committees, the Economic Committee, the Security Committee, and the Political Committee, and the various actions that are necessary. A very strong message must come from Washington by agreement that they are prepared to step by step implement the Oslo and Madrid Accords. If that is done, I believe that we can overcome the difficulties. Notwithstanding the horrendous loss of life in recent days, we can overcome the difficulties that have been caused.
قلت هو أن هذا السلام ليس مطلبا فلسطينيا فقط، ولكنه مطلبا إسرائيليا كما هو مطلبا فلسطينيا. وفي نفس الوقت هو مطلبا دوليا. وهذا الاجتماع الذي تم اليوم مع السادة الترويكا يعطيني الأمل الكبير، لأن هذا يعني موقفا أوروبيا عالميا لدفع عملية السلام ولحمايتها. وأنا لدي آمال كبيرة لكثير من القوى العالمية التي تهتم حاليا بعملية السلام. وبلا شك أنا أقدر تقدير عالي إنه في الوقت اللي السيد الرئيس كلينتون
President Arafat, can you specifically, could I ask the President and the Council, can you explain consent of aid to Palestinians? Why is it that Europe is not represented in the summit? This financial contribution to transform into some kind of serious political influence over the Middle East peace process.
and to be fulfilled and to be promised. As an example, the close of this tunnel. And the further redeployment for the rest of the West Bank. And also technical steps to recover again the confidence between the two sides after what we had faced in the last days, where 1,600 had been injured and 84 had been killed. Look, this is what had been used from the helicopters. Against our civilians. And but we have to remember that when Mr. Netanyahu had a meeting with me, the pool in Israel gave a very important answer. 82% was with the meeting for the peace process, which he gave us the confidence that we will continue in spite of all the obstacles and the difficulties which we are facing.
Just to answer very briefly, Lionel, I have to say that it's very much my belief that the contribution which we have to make to the peace process would be far better reflected by our presence at the discussions in Washington. And I believe that the discussions in Washington would be potentially far more comprehensive and far more complete with the European Union presence at those talks. Now, we also have to acknowledge the fact that other co-sponsors of the process are not going to be present in Washington. I mentioned Russia in particular. And I think what is most important is that there would be a result from the discussions that will take place in Washington. And that primarily, I have to say, is perhaps the responsibility of the Israeli government and the Palestinian Authority, with the help and the assistance of President Clinton and his officials. So we would look for concrete results from that, and we are prepared, as I said in response to an earlier question, to respond to whatever the requirements are, whatever is necessary for the European Union. We have a very strong commitment financially, politically, economically and morally, and that commitment is going to continue. What we need to see is momentum restored to the process. Mr. Dini.
Spring, I think, has also answered the question that you addressed to me. Now, I think that there is no question of the fact that Europe, being the main provider of financial assistance to the Palestinians and to other Middle Eastern countries, it does have a role to play. And I also think that it also has political influence. Now, we don't have to pull our weight around, in a very complex situation. We want to play a constructive role. What we are sorry for at this point in time is that because of the strife that Palestinians and the blockade and the closure of the territories, the Palestinians are losing revenues every day. that serve to finance their own current consumption, and which has to be made up one way or another. It is a pity that the European Union's assistance that normally should be devoted to projects rather than to finance current consumption, at this point in time, as I say, goes exactly into consumption. We would want, as Vice President Marin has indicated, Commissioner Marin, that this cannot last, of course, for long. But at the same time, we feel that this is essential assistance and it should be provided. But Europe is also, providing through its trade and commerce with Israel considerable indirect help. The Israeli economy depends greatly on Europe for its exports and for its markets. And this should not be forgotten. So on the one hand, we are providing assistance to the Palestinians, but we will continue to keep Israel integrated in our markets, in spite of the difficulties that have arisen in the Middle East at this point in time.
One final, one-part question on companies.
I am not putting any conditions, because peace is a precious target. What I had signed with my partner, Prime Minister Rabin, who lost his life for the peace of the brave, and after him, Mr. Shimon Peres. I hope I will continue with Mr. Netanyahu. And for this, I am here tonight to get the help of our friends here in the European Union to push forward for the peace process and to protect it. I will not repeat what had been repeated in Israel today, this morning, that the bags are empty. No, our bags are full of promises and commitments and our desire, and we are insisting to continue in the peace process, in spite of what we had suffered.
Thank you.